Hello AP students, let's look at our vocab words. We're going to get started right away in 3.1, and let's start off with Silk Road Network. And you've seen this word pretty much before. The Silk Road Network is basically not one road, but the many roads that connected trade in Eurasia. Now, the Silk Road Network existed both in the classical era and the post-classical era. And it is responsible for all kinds of goods, products being traded back and forth. Originally, the Silk Road began the classical era between Rome, over here, and China. Then in the post-classical era, it transitions, and we see there's the Abbasid caliphate, the Islamic caliphates that take a lot of active roles in the trade network, along with the Mongols take a lot of active role in the trade network in the post-classical era. So we see trade like silk, obviously, and other goods, but we also see a lot of trade of ideas, diffusion, culture, religions like Buddhism, Islam, even Christianity on parts of the Silk Road go back and forth. And we also see a lot of disease epidemics go back and forth on this route as well. Plague that happens in Han China, happens in Rome, happens with the Mongols and many people all over this area. So it is a network of trade and communication that exists in both classical and post-classical era, brings goods and products. All right, the Abbasid Caliphate is a Muslim dynasty that rose. This rose after Muhammad had basically his revelation that was given him by the angel Gabriel to him, and started the faith called Islam. After the religion of Islam starts, the Abbasid Caliphate takes large parts of the Middle East, Arabia, and North Africa, even all the way into Spain. And this becomes one of the dominant powers of the post-classical era. So the Abbasid Caliphate becomes a dominant power, a major player on the Silk Road, and Islam, their caliphates, which basically mean kind of like their kingdoms led by a caliph who's seen as like the religious and political leader of Islam, were able to establish large empires in the post-classical era, and they were very pro-trade. They wanted to trade, they wanted to do business, which makes sense since the person who started Islam, Muhammad, himself was a merchant and a trader. So a very powerful post-classical empire. The Mongol Empire. Now this was originally started by Genghis Khan, carried on by his ancestors after him. The Mongol Empire started small in Mongolia. These were people who were very, very good horseback riders, pastoral people, who were able to, over time, we can see here by 1294, established the largest land empire in the post-classical era, and one of the largest continuous land empire ever in world history. Largest continuous land empire in world history. The Mongol Empire stretched all the way just to Europe, got barely to Europe. The Middle East took over large parts, and they were even able to take over China. They're also very well known in this area for Pax Mongolica, which is basically the time of the Mongol peace, where the Mongols basically controlled and kept the Silk Road trade safe, which kept ideas and goods going back and forth. So Genghis Khan started it. Kublai Khan will come along later, and this becomes a very powerful empire in the post-classical era. Significant for the amount of land that they took over, but also significant for expanding trade. Taking over a lot of empires like China has a huge impact in the post-classical world. The Mediterranean trade network was a network that was obviously very important in Roman times, in the Roman Empire. After the Western Roman Empire falls, though, the Mediterranean network does stay and has power in the Byzantine Empire, where the Byzantine Empire is able to get this trade and continue. So we see the Mediterranean trade network begins in the Roman Empire, but is still power and influential as the Byzantine Empire moves trade. Also later in the Mediterranean network, the city of Constantinople also becomes a very powerful trade center of the Byzantine Empire. It is in the middle of this thing called the Bosporus, which is in between the Aegean and Black Sea. So it's in the middle of many trade routes, and this is where Constantinople and the Byzantine Empire becomes stronger. And the Mediterranean trade network, again, began in the Classical era and continued in the post-Classical era. Classical era was more where the Mediterranean was considered a Roman lake, where in the post-Classical era, the Mediterranean trade network is more taken over by the Byzantine Empire. And let's just keep going with our next two words. So the Byzantine Empire. This is a big one. There's a whole video you'll see on this later, but the Byzantine Empire is basically the Eastern Roman Empire that does not fall. So here we see a map of the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine Empire right here is definitely the eastern part of the Roman Empire. Now when an emperor named Justinian comes in, he's able to enlarge it, and it looks like he might retake the Roman Empire. But what happens is the Byzantine Empire is the eastern half of the Roman Empire. It didn't fall in 476. In 476, the Western Roman Empire fell. The Byzantine Empire actually lasts all the way until 1453. So it ends almost the entire post-classical era when the city of Constantinople eventually falls and ends the empire. It's taken over by the Ottoman Turks as they come in and take over the empire and end Rome in 1453. And the Byzantines would have considered themselves Romans. They wouldn't have considered themselves Byzantines at all. So this is, again, the Eastern Roman Empire, very significant as it keeps the traditions of Rome going for nearly 1,000 years after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. All right, our next word is Constantinople. What you need to know about Constantinople is that it was the capital of the Byzantine Empire, first called Byzantium, then Constantinople. It is a major trade center, and it's located right here. We're talking about Mediterranean trade network in the Bosphorus, in between the Black Sea, the Aegean Sea, which gives you to trade up here to Russia, other areas of access to the Silk Road, all the way into the Mediterranean, which made it a major trade center and the capital of the Byzantine Empire. It first became rich when it became the eastern part of the Roman Empire became stronger than the west, and it continued to expand and grow in the Byzantine Empire, and again, it was a major trade center on this Mediterranean trade route. Here we see our Trans-Saharan trade route, and the main good that people wanted from the Trans-Saharan trade route was gold, which is located in this area. And in this area of West Africa, they had a real need for salt. So what happened is a lot of Arab and North African traders would go into West Africa, and they would bring in salt and trade it for gold. What made this trade possible was the domestication of the camel and the saddles that they could ride and they could load up, which both helped with the Silk Road and the Trans-Saharan trade route. The Kingdom of Mali became very powerful in this trade route, and the city of Timbuktu became a major trade center that expanded during this time with the trade of gold and salt, and as you will see in a future lecture, grew and had many universities and became a very powerful city in the Trans-Saharan trade network. Mali, the Kingdom of Mali, or the Empire of Mali, this became a very powerful empire because they controlled the salt and gold trade. They had the gold here in West Africa, and many people would come in. They were able to build their capital of their major city, not capital, their major city of Timbuktu. They were able to build, and it expanded. They had emperors like Sundiata and also Mansa Musa, who we'll talk about later, who was the richest person ever to live in the world, who technically owned all the gold of the Mali Empire. Major player on the Trans-Saharan trade network. Very significant as gold from the Mali Empire gets used as a currency in many of these trade networks, including the Silk Road, and you can find gold coins as far as places from China. The Indian Ocean trade route, which started in the Classical era and expanded in the post-Classical era. Started off with the Silk Road, but then people started realizing they could bring larger loads of trade by ship, and they connect even more people. Everyone from, we have here the Swahili coast, to India, to China, to Southeast Asia, as there's major trade going back and forth all over the Indian Ocean between all of these lands. Technology that allowed it was a lot of the ships, the boats that we see here. There's a Chinese junk ship with a sail on it, and there we see a Dhow ship right there. These were sails that could move and could actually allow you to sail basically into the wind, and that allowed the trade to expand, along with learning the monsoon season of when to travel into India. This greatly expanded trade, cultural diffusion, language, religions like Islam spread in the post-classical era, as well on the Indian Ocean trade route. The Swahili coast, we can see it right here. The Swahili coast is the part of East Africa, which is a major player on the Indian Ocean trade route. There are major trade cities like Mogadishu, Mombasa, we see there, Zimbabwe, and these are major traders of ivory, gold, even some slaves that get traded all throughout the Indian Ocean trade route, and this becomes a very powerful trade cities. They take a lot of the goods from the interior of Africa and are able to trade them all over the world, along with having a lot of the ships that we talked about that also sail off this coast in the Indian Ocean trade route. Srivijaya, we can see right here. This is a Buddhist kingdom that has a spice trade that we can see up there from the reading too. That takes place through the Straits of Malacca near today the Philippines, and it helps Buddhism diffuse and the religion of Buddhism spread throughout the area of Southeast Asia. Like many places at this time, Srivijaya grows with trade. They're able to get spices that many other parts in the world want on the Indian Ocean trade route, and they're able to trade them from Southeast Asia to other parts of the world through the Indian Ocean trade route. Very significant as Buddhism spreads, along with spices and other trade goods. Next is the Hanseatic League. Now, Europe kind of gets left out of this post-classical era because Europe is not one of the major players yet. They will be soon. But the Hanseatic League was a northern European trade route. And I'm going to give you a couple cities that we're going to go over at the same time here. So the Hanseatic League was basically a league of cities that traded goods back and forth and were able to see some development in northern Europe. I kind of got it highlighted here from our reading, but included cities from Novgorod, Russia, to London, and it went between the North and Baltic Seas. And it was established, this league, to protect trade between member cities. So it had a court system that was able to settle disputes, so people wouldn't fight back and forth, and they could set fair trade rules. They traded timber, they traded fish, all along the North Sea, and this allowed some cities to grow. And it wasn't like an empire, it was more like a league of cities agreeing to trade so they could all benefit. So let's look at one of our cities, and this is a pretty important one. This is Novgorod, a member of the Hanseatic League. And it's vital because this connected Europe merchants with Arab and Byzantine counterparts. So they were protected from the marshes and the woods, so the Mongols couldn't come and get them like the Mongols were kind of getting everybody. And if you look on the map too here of where's our Byzantine Empire, there it is. Novgorod, can we find it here? Novgorod, where are you? It is right here, and it's connected by rivers where it could trade with Constantinople right here. It was also connected because it's fairly close to other traders on the Silk Roads a little north there, but could still have contacts with the Muslim world and Byzantine, and they were able to use the goods they got here to trade them further into northern Europe, which allowed Novgorod to become richer. Very significant because they advanced trade for much of northern Europe in the post-classical era. Let's look at Malacca right now. Malacca in Southeast Asia, right here we see it too, we're going to read more about it. It becomes a very important in the spice trade, being right near Srivijaya, the Buddhist empire. And here is where in Malacca, in the Srivijaya Empire, they're able to trade spices and they're able to grow this city as it is able to become wealthy in the post-classical era on the Indian Ocean trade route. So they take their spices here and they're able to trade them all throughout here and gain wealth for the city. We'll take a pause here. We'll get the next three vocab words. Those are going to be linked in the next video on the website. So go ahead, turn me off, and you can start the next video. See you guys in a few minutes there. Bye.